Before we begin, please take this time to silence your cell phone and electronic devices as our program will begin shortly. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Frank Hayden, your narrator for today's ceremony. It is my distinct privilege to welcome you to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base as we celebrate one of our most cherished and time-honored ceremonies. Today, the men and women of the Air Force Life Cycle Management Center's F-16 Division pay special tribute to Miss Janet Miller upon her retirement from the United States Air Force after more than 37 years of faithful and honorable service. The presiding officer for today's ceremony is Mr. Donald W. Thompson, Jr., Deputy Program Executive Officer, Fighter and Bombers Directorate. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the arrival of the official party and remain standing for the singing of the national anthem performed by Jessica Tucker.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets regulate the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Jessica. The invocation will now be given by Pastor June.
I invite you into a time of prayer. Gracious and holy God, we gather here and ask your blessing upon this assembly as we honor Janet Miller. We give you thanks, O God, for her dedication to the work to which you called her and her 37-year career as an acquisition program manager. And so now as she enters a time of retirement from this vocation, we pray for your continued blessings upon her. In the midst of life's changes and during this transition into the next phase of her life, may your presence guide her as she chooses new paths. Give her joy and peace, grateful for a life full of mission and purpose, that looking forward, she finds new ways to be fulfilled in the years to come. We pray, O God, that you will bless her husband David, all her family, and all who are gathered here to support her this day. Bless Janet and David together to enjoy the journey that lies ahead. Again, dear God, we thank you for what has been, and we pray that you make us grateful for what is yet to be. In your most holy name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor June. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. I'd like to take a moment before we get started to recognize Miss Miller's family and special guests. Please hold your applause until all guests have been introduced. Miss Miller's husband, David, her sister, Judy, and brother-in-law, Benny Williams, Benny's mother, Ruby, her niece, Jenny, her nephew, Benny, and Miss Miller's friends, Toby and Michelle Petrie, and Beth Evans. We would also like to extend a warm welcome to Brigadier General Heath Collins, Air Force PEO for Fighters and Bombers Directorate, retired Colonel Chris Baird, former F-16 System Program Director, and to our other distinguished guests, chiefs, branch chiefs, supervisors, members of the F-16 Program Office, friends and family. Thank you for taking the time to help Miss Miller celebrate her retirement. At this time, please welcome Mr. Donald W. Thompson, Jr.
Well, first, let's see, I would like to thank Jessica for that beautiful rendition of our national anthem that symbolizes and points to the symbol of freedom, for which has cost many. Thank you for that. Pastor June, thank you for sharing that prayer with us. Thank you for supporting Janet Miller. Let's see, well, good afternoon again, family and friends. Welcome all to the best directorate and the best center and the #1 command for the world's greatest Air Force as we celebrate a lifetime achievement of a top professional. A steady, my boss, General Collins, uses the word when he describes you, Janet, as a steady and tested leader. And an innovator. Janet, that's you. But before I take about 2 hours to cover almost 4 decades, I would just like to quickly say welcome and acknowledge again those close family and friends that are here. Beth, where are you, Beth? We're so glad to see you, Beth. Judy, Benny, let's see, Ruby, Jenny, Benny again. Thanks for coming. Toby, Michelle, thank you. And of course, boss, thank you for coming. I know how daunting your task is. I get to see it up close every day, and I know what your schedule looks like, and I know the demands that are placed on you. But you believe our people are not only our precious resource, but they're the gift that we have to execute our mission. So I want to thank you for taking time. And I know it's not a sacrifice for you because this is a priority, so thank you for coming. So, Janet, this is your life. You know I'm going to enjoy this, Janet. So, let's see. Janet was born and raised in Logan, Ohio, which is currently a sprawling and vibrant community. You all have never heard of Logan, Ohio? With a population of 7,100. That's 2010 census, Janet. Right outside of Columbus, Ohio. And there you attended Logan High School? Yes, sir. Purple and white? Go Chieftains. Go Chieftains. Let's see, from there she attended Capital University in Columbus, where she majored in physics. That I did not know. Science, comrade. Physics, and was commissioned in ROTC there. Janet's first assignment in the Air Force was at Hill Air Force Base, where she served 4 years active duty and 10 additional years as a civilian, all in the Intercontinental Ballistic Missile System Program Office, where she gained experience leading programs from requirements, generation to fielding. Those of us in the Air Force knows what that means. For you that are not in the Air Force, that means from the beginning of the program to the end of the program, and programs last a long time. and they take an awful long time to start. But Janet was able to do that. She learned the value of making decisions on those programs. More importantly, Janet got to see the results of those decisions. Now, at Hill Air Force Base, in that program, she met someone there. Rumor holds she met her husband David while at Hill Air Force Base. So this is Don Thompson's rendition of this Hallmark story. David and Janet, love at first sight. So here's how I understand. I'm going to take the liberties to, make it exciting. So, professionally, Janet, so don't worry. All in good taste. So, David's first move, and David, I got to tell you, this was awesome. David's first move was that he noticed Janet suffering from a new set of braces and decided to help. Apparently, when Janet returned to the office from a series of meetings, David had placed an individual serving size of applesauce on her desk. That was a subtle move. I'm told Janet thought it was a good gesture, but didn't really think much of it. So what does David do? My man, he upped his game. Janet was an officer. David was enlisted. Janet had the honor of re-enlisting David. The setting was in a small squadron commander's office. I'm going to add the word quaint. After Janet administered the oath of office, and while waiting for David to salute her, David leans in and gives her a kiss. Now pause. That was high risk. Where I come from, we call that a high reward power move. This move could have had disastrous consequences for David. Needless to say, Janet was very surprised as David did a sneak attack that seemed to be inappropriate. Now pause again. Now we know how appropriate Janet is, right? I can only imagine the moment. But I'm told everyone else thought it was great. And the rest is history. Good on you, David. This Hallmark moment segued into Janet's 14-year tour at Hill Air Force Base as an active duty and civilian airman. That was 14 years there. All right. Then Janet decided to answer the call for volunteers for a special assignment. So in less than 2 weeks from the solicitation for volunteers to fly across country, she landed right here on aviation holy ground, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in 1995 as part of a new team chartered to reform acquisition. Was that the third or fourth reform? I don't know. Janet learned a lesson of being ready when opportunity knocks. Janet was prepared for the moment, and her efforts led to the stand-up of the Command Level Acquisition Center of Excellence. And this team ended up winning the Packard Award for Acquisition Excellence. As a program manager, Janet joined the Aeronautical Systems Center in the B-1 program office, the bones, sir, if she only knew the bones worries these days. Her mission was to add the global positioning system and the joint directed attack munition capability to the B-1 aircraft. Now, family, let me tell you what that really means. What that really means is she integrated an all-weather guided weapon that changed the bomber game from many sorties needed to destroy enemy targets, multiple targets, a lot of aircraft, to multiple aircraft being destroyed in just one mission with multiple weapons. That's what Janet did. Janet contributed to bringing the bone, as we like to call it, the B-1 back in the fight. This capability enabled the roving linebacker role, tailor-made for the B-1 in Afghanistan. More importantly, the precision-guided weapon that Janet was responsible for integrating onto the B-1 helped to reduce civilian casualties. That's published, Janet. I read it on Google. Yes. Then Janet became the director of logistics. Sir, Janet became the director of logistics for the mobility director. Now, she was a program manager, and they picked her as a, oh, we'll talk about that later. Hard to do these days, which included the C-130 aircraft, the C-5, C-17, and our VIP, our very important persons fleet, such as the vice president's aircraft. Next, Janet moved to the program management home office, where she stood up a robust training program for program managers to include new lieutenants and civilian interns. During that time, she co-developed the How to Interview course. Janet has taught the course for 15 years. I did not know that, Janet. And it remains one of the most popular courses offered at Wright-Patt today. So now, let's see, let's have a show of hands of how many people have taken the course with Janet over the years. Show of hands, look at that. What a legacy. I understand that, by the way, that was over half the room. I understand that Janet shared this one nugget of truth or career advice in her class, and I've heard it. Nothing is more important than doing your present job well. Do the job you're given. Janet has spent almost 4 decades investing in people and meaningful relationships. There is an example that highlights her dedication to workforce development. One of Janet's proudest moments in her career was when Janet received a hockey jersey from a lieutenant who graduated from the academy. So now here's the backstory to that. Apparently, this lieutenant was told that he could play professional hockey while serving on active duty. Wow, what a promise. Does that happen very often? No, I'm just... The then commander, I won't say of which center or location, initially did not agree, which made this lieutenant's life fairly miserable, as you could imagine. Janet's task as his supervisor was to allow him to play hockey while making sure the Air Force got good work out of him. Janet trained the lieutenant as at the craziest of hours and figured out severable work that could be done on the team bus while the rest of the teams were gambling in the back. At least that's what I'm told. Janet claims he was a good officer caught in a bad situation. That was her take on it. Janet felt her efforts made a difference in this lieutenant's career and his life. At the end, the lieutenant eventually, at the farewell, he presented a game jersey to Janet, that jersey that Janet so proudly cherishes and keeps today. Now, in 2005, Janet was selected as the B-2 deputy director. Boss, I didn't know she had all these assignments. Where she oversaw 2 acquisition Category 1 programs. Now, family, acquisition 1, 2, 3, you'll hear us talk about. That is the biggest of the largest. That's the hugest of the hugest. That's very big. That's billions of dollars. And she had 2 of those. However, her biggest challenge weren't the billions of dollars. Her biggest challenge in the B-2 was when a renewable energy consortium proposed a wind farm near a critical test facility. Rather than build a position opposing the wind farm, Janet reached out to the company proposing the wind turbines and the Kern County, California board to devise a win-win solution for the Air Force and for the company and for the community. Janet's takeaway from this experience was that engaging all players, especially those likely to disagree with your perspective, is usually more important than simply advocating your position. Wow. Yet another example of a seasoned leader focused on outcomes. After obtaining a second master's at the Eisenhower School, and that's what she did after that assignment, which is a year-long program for colonels or GS-15s who are on the career fast track. So what that means is the Air Force saw something in Janet more than Janet saw in herself. And they decided to send Janet to the Eisenhower School. After that, Janet got assigned to the five-sided building, which we affectionately call the Pentagon, where she worked for Air Staff in the policy shop for 1 year. I'm not sure Janet enjoyed that, so we snagged her. We snagged her. After that assignment, we snagged her back here at Wright-Patterson in the program management home office, where she oversaw a hiring surge and placement of new program managers. It was in this capacity that I got to know Janet. So a lot of the accelerated hiring processes that we use today, Janet was the author and founder of those processes. Those processes still exist today, and they'll exist long after the rest of us retire. When it was time for me to rotate, Janet was there, and back then Janet helped me understand my options and where to move. So I thank you for that, Janet. She was my counselor. Now, in her last stop before the F-16, Janet worked on classified programs within fighters and bombers. And while I can't say much about that assignment, what I can tell you is she was instrumental, boss, in setting up the B-21 program office. I didn't know that either. Team, I didn't know that. 2015, she was selected as a development systems manager for the F-16. And the other speakers I won't talk too much on that because other speakers after me will talk more in depth about her accomplishments, and will probably add some funny scenarios to those, which I could not do justice. But she did an excellent job for us in fighters and bombers on the F-16, which received more than $1 billion in congressional plus-ups for our Air Force fleet. And that's a fleet of 900-plus aircraft. That's what Janet led and enabled her team to do. She also directed one of the largest foreign military sales upgrade programs in the Air Force. Now, in conclusion, Janet, we have observed your teammates, and I dare say your family has observed that your pedigree, your passion, your body of work on campus and in the community, your dedication, your testimony, your faith is summed up in what I believe in these next two passages that I'm going to read here, or captions. The first is by Erica Anderson from her book, Growing Great Employees. If life were fair, teammates would be perfect. They would do exactly what we asked them to do, exactly when we asked them to do it, except, of course, for the fantastic ideas that they would cook up on their own. Well, back to reality. Your teammates are like you and me, flawed and hopeful human beings whose success is at least partly dependent on your skill as a leader, as a servant, as a supervisor, as a follower. Human beings who will thrive with skillful and consistent attention or wither without it. The second caption, unknown author. So I took more liberty in this one. Your career achievements and contributions to our nation, Your career achievements and contributions to our nation have reminded us that we can learn about leadership reading books, and that's a must. Or attending seminars, and we all should. But you will never become a better leader by only doing those things. So lead from the front, give your full measure, go where the action is, and have fun. Janet, that to me is what I saw at a distance in you. Thank you. On behalf of our boss, Brigadier General Collins, and I, your fighter bomber family who loves you dearly, and the airmen you've served in the Air Force, multiple assignments, multiple locations, we thank you for your service. Enjoy the next phase in your journey as it's full of promise, and have fun. It has been a pleasure to serve with and for you, Janet. We will miss you tremendously, and may God continue to bless you, David, and your family, and your dear friends from here to eternity. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. 1 second, please. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the presentation of the Outstanding Civilian Career Service Award. Department of the Air Force presents the Outstanding Civilian Career Service Award to Janet L. Miller in recognition of her distinguished performance in support of the United States Air Force from 10 October 1981 to 30 June 2019, most notably as Development System Manager, F-16 Division, Fighter and Bombers Directorate, Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, Air Force Materiel Command, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio. Ms. Miller directed all aspects of F-16 acquisition, including the development and delivery of the Viper configuration and active electronically scannable array radar, keeping F-16 relevant in combat. She oversaw the activation of the Automated Ground Collision Avoidance System, which has saved over 5 pilots' lives and their aircraft. The distinctive accomplishment of Ms. Miller culminate a long and distinguished career with the United States government and reflect great credit upon herself and the United States Air Force. Signed 30 June 2019, Kathy Wadern, SES, Executive Director, Air Force Lifecycle Management Center. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. At this time, would General Collins come join us on stage? General Collins will now present the Certificate of Service. Every person retiring from civilian service is presented with a special certificate of service from the Armed Forces of the United States of America. To commemorate their service, the certificate reads, Certificate of Service from the United States Air Force. This is to recognize Janet Louise Miller for 37 years of faithful and devoted federal civilian service on the occasion of retirement from employment with the United States Air Force. Given this 30th day of June 2019, signed Heath A. Collins, Brigadier General, U.S. Air Force, Program Executive Officer, Fighters and Bombers. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. David Miller to come forward. David received a certificate of appreciation from Brigadier General Collins. It reads, in grateful appreciation, the United States Air Force presents a certificate of recognition to David W. Miller for the commitment and numerous contributions that made positive impacts to the nation's defense. Thank you for the support which gave strength and purpose to your spouse's service. Given this 30th day of June 2019, signed Heath A. Collins, Brigadier General, United States Air Force, Program Executive Officer, Fighters and Bombers. At this time, Mr. Greg Burns, on behalf of Lockheed Martin Director, would like to congratulate Ms. Miller. Mr. Burns, will you please come forward?
Janet, first of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting us to this special occasion today. We really appreciate it. Susan Utz sends her deepest regards. She would love to have been here today as well, but she's actually on an airplane flying back from Greece right now. So we so much appreciate the collaborative nature that Janet brings to the table. I don't know how many times that we've all been in a meeting and we work closely with the SPO up here, and she can bring such clarity to an issue that we're struggling with. So we thank you for that collaboration and how you handle your relationship with us. Another item, I think, is the F-16, how we have, the impact that's had around the world, that, the relationships that we've been able to establish with other countries. And, you've made a huge impact around the world with those relationships and with our FMS partners. So as a small token of our appreciation, we have an F-16 model here. I didn't want to put it together because I broke it the last time I put one together. So let's just keep it in the box, and it's signed by everyone that you worked with at Lockheed, and we are really going to miss you.
Greg, thank you so much. You can't succeed as an Air Force professional if your contractor fails.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Would Ms. Christine Berry please join us on stage?
Is that all right? Because I need to be able to pull out. Hold it from the tip that way. Thank you. So Janet, I just want you to know that Iraq accepted your challenge, because we love a challenge. And Janet told us she didn't want a bunch of stuff that said Iraq or whatever. So we said, how are we going to do this that every day Janet will think of the Iraq team? So we got a few things for you. The first one is about the fact that you're going back to do, brush up on your sign language. And I know you always are toting things. So.
How nice.
Okay.
Thank you.
So it's a little tote, and it says, you don't have to speak to have something to say. Okay? So that's the first part. And because of that, when you think about that, it kind of means sign language. But I also know that you are an avid thank you writer. So, right? So now she has a lot of blank notes so that she can say what she wants to say without having to speak.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I
We're
will
not done
use
yet.
those.
We're not done. Okay. The second part, I'll just leave your card there too. The second part of it is the Iraq part, right? So, as you know, Iraq. This one doesn't have English, so you have to prove that you know what you're doing.
Oh, I better put my glasses on. Okay. If you can read this, you rock. So I think you rock, I rock.
You rock, I rock.
So, what would have been in that, but I needed to make it a little easier, is something to represent the program. And that's my stuff now. Okay. So when you think of Iraq, you think of the desert. You think of the desert, you think of cactus. So we have 3 cactus here representing AFSAT, AFSAC, and the program office. Now when you think about a cactus, right, it's a lot of little pieces held together by one main core. And that's kind of like our program office, right? There's a lot of us held together by one main core. All right, so this represents everything that you've done for us. And as you'll notice, this one's a little prickly, and I told Greg I was going to take a stab at Lockheed, but I won't. What I'm going to say is, sometimes relationships get a little prickly, so that's why this this one cactus isn't smooth, because not everything in our life is smooth. Now, there's one other part to this, and that's the colors, right? So everybody sees blue and white, and you think, thank you. Not when I see blue and white. I see Penn State. Okay. So we try, like I said, this is something the whole team put together to make sure that we didn't give you an Iraq picture, but you have something to remember all of us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And as Mr. Munger is making his way, the Iraq team, I know there are several of you here, you're giving that country a chance.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. Mr. Munger, would you please join us?
Thanks, everyone, for coming. This is a testament to what you've done across your career. Words can't, express enough thanks that we have, what you've done for us, how you've enabled us, how you've empowered us, how you have given us the lift that we needed, the guidance that we needed, time after time after time. We knew that we could count on you. We knew that we could depend on you to help us through those tough spots. And I think everyone heard in her bio and Mr. Thompson's, discussion of her career that it was the people that she helped along the way. And I think that, we build stuff, we do great things, but at the end of your career, it's the people that you've impacted. And I think you saw that from your mentoring classes, your how to interview class. Took that class, 2 days later, I got an interview, I got promoted. It was just perfect timing that what you, enabled us and what you imparted on us has helped our careers, and it's the impact that you've made. So David, thank you for sharing her with us. I know that sometimes it was a little frustrating because we would keep her a little bit later and dinner was ready. And so thank you for your patience with us. But again, at the end of the day, it's the people that make the difference. And so from the USAF and EPAF team, we would just like to give you our farewell picture.
Wonderful.
All of us that you can always remember us by. I know you don't like things and stuff, but I know that I've noticed that you like pictures of people that you can remember. So on behalf of the USAF EPAF team, thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Munger. Would Ms. Beth Quinter please come forward?
Well, Miss Miller, I can't believe it. 37 years.
I started when I was 10 or so.
I figured. You have been such a mentor and have given such good guidance to all the Air Force foreign military sales folks that are here, as well as the EPAF side of the F-16, that we are here to support you. You've done such a phenomenal job. We hope that we can follow in your footsteps and carry on the diplomatic efforts that we try for each day. It's been such a pleasure. We put together a few things. Oh, it's over there. It's over on the other side.
Okay.
Together a few things, some mementos, and we hope that you enjoy your next journey with your husband.
Thank you. And I want to thank the USAF team that's here today, as well as our FMS team, which Beth represents. And really, it's been remarkable to lead such a fine program office.
Little technical difficulty, I think.
Okay. And the program manager is going to go crack the whip on the engineer.
Where did it go? We got your phenomenal Zero Coke vanilla.
Oh, yeah, great.
We got and a Barnes & Noble gift card because we know you're an avid reader. and some other
Wow.
miscellaneous.
Thank
things
you
in
so
here.
much.
It's pretty heavy. You want me to carry it?
I'm gonna I'll give it to the lieutenant. Okay.
All right.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Take care.
Thank you, Ms. Quinter. You guys didn't know you were coming to a magic show, right? Not too bad, huh? Okay. Would Mr. T.J. Jones please join us on stage?
I brought mine with me so I didn't lose it. I first joined the SPO in May, no, it was April of last year. First time working in SPO. And I remember the first day I was in your office or Mr. Brown's office, I don't remember which, and you guys were asking me questions about, do you have any questions about anything? And I really didn't know what to ask at the time. So I was kind of dumbfounded. But I just want to say, Ms. Miller, I've learned a lot from your mentorship and guidance over the past 14 months. I sincerely appreciate all of that because I've learned a lot. My head goes home hurting most days, and I know if it isn't hurting when I go home, that means I haven't learned enough. So, but in recognition for all that you've done for the logistics branch, for your supervision, leadership, mentorship, passion for the F-16 program, we've got a picture for you of the branch. We were going to take it in front of the F-16, but unfortunately Memorial Day rolled around and it decided to take flight from what I heard. So it's no longer on the stick out there. But here's a picture of the branch.
Oh,
We've all
great.
signed it.
Oh,
Little
thank
plaque at
you.
the bottom and the names. Well, it's actually 2/3 of the branch. We can't keep these guys in their seats. And then the names of the individuals.
Oh,
are on the
wonderful.
back.
Thank
So
you so
you're-
very much.
There you go. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. So delivering without logistics is delivering a dead system. And it's our logisticians that make that tail end of an older weapon system continue to thrive and be flying. I'm sorry, I'm preempting some of my own comments.
This is
a
your
little
show,
later,
ma'am.
But we've been flying in continuous combat operations since the buildup to the Iraq I war in 1990. This would not be possible without our logisticians.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Would Mr. Chris Early please join us on stage?
So when we found out that Ms. Miller didn't necessarily want tripping staff or involvement or things like that, that was sort of easy for engineering just to typically go from the most useful thing to an engineer, which is very. But unfortunately, I don't think I've ever seen you bring anything, so we decided not to. Well, we did. It took us a while to figure this out, but we did get you a candy dish that has our typical saying, and I got to use my glasses too because I'm here. The scientist describes what is, the engineer creates what never was, and that was Theodore Barn-Carman. And on here, it's got Janet L. Miller, Development System Manager, Fighters and Bombers, from June 2016 to June of 2019.
Thank you.
Is that right?
Thank you very much.
It also has pound for pound.
Pound for pound, the best fighter around. Yeah, thank you. In the interview class, one of the things that I always work with is which function is the most important to program success. And it's really designed to make sure that you'll take a position and defend it. And I tell people, when in doubt, say program management, because everyone on the other side of the table are program managers, so flatter them. But engineering, you can always throw more money at something. You can always extend the schedule. You can always work harder. But if it's not technologically feasible, we're not able to field something. And that is absolutely critical contribution that our engineering team makes.
Thank you, Mr. Zerly. Would Mr. Dan Andrews please join us on stage?
We decided to go really practical with your gift. So I know you mentioned a few times your husband beat you to retirement by quite a few years. And so in your new role, we thought we'd give you some gifts that you can really use. So you may not know what some of these things do. You can read the labels. He can probably help you out. So all sorts of cleaning supplies. So I think it's about time, you can probably pitch in at the house a little bit. But seriously.
That's wonderful.
We also got you a gift card to a restaurant so that there's a couple places you can choose from. So hopefully you have a nice night out on your PK friends and you can think about your good times on the F-16 program. Want to thank you for just all the leadership that you provided, the mentorship. As everyone talked about all the things that you've done to help other people in their professional development, because it really is about the people. And it's just that you're a mentor and really someone to kind of model a career after as well. So if the restaurant takes a long time for the service, I know PK has taught you patience with our acquisition timelines. So hopefully that helps you out in your future. Thank you.
Well, you mentioned patience, but in my career, I have a lot of experience of us trying to worry about requirements and figure out what we're going to do and changing our mind for the first 8 or 9 months of the year. And then in about this time of the year, we run over to PK and say, well, will you hurry up and put this on contract? What is taking you so long? And thank you to our contracting team.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. Would Mr. Danny Johnson please join us on stage?
So when I think of Miss Miller, I think of the Peanuts cartoon series with the Peanuts theme playing in the background and Lucy studying in her doctor's office or psychiatrist's office. Because that's what Miss Miller is to the team. Bring her your troubles, bring her your worries, and she'll give you some solid advice for a nickel. You can't beat getting some solid advice for a nickel, right? You really can't. I promise not to tell the story about when she was overseas and she tripped and fell, allegedly. Allegedly, again, there was no alcohol involved. And those that know her knows it was not. It was just a very tough accident, but that shows her spirit also. She was at work that next week, and even with pressing dental work to be done, she was there cranking it out and doing her job. Someone you should emulate. The true epitome of a professional. She has a solid sense of humor, tough to get out sometimes, great advice, and a way that you can actually help everyone move forward. So, in that regard, I don't have a picture of the FM squad, because the FM squad will probably fade from your mind because all we do is throw money in. That's what she said. So, I know. So what I did do is something I found what I think is a good representation of FM and how highly we regard her. So for this is a 2009 mint series of coins.
Wow.
Oh, including a sterling silver dollar.
Oh my goodness.
That was when they have a challenge coin basically thrown at you, even if it is by a general officer or higher, this will trump them all. It's sterling silver, it's the money of the land, and you can't beat it.
It's beautiful. Thank you very much. And we actually do collect coins, so that's very nice.
Well,
thank you.
There you go.
Thank you. If you're trying to do a program, this is General Raggio's phrase, and then General Reynolds also adopted, for those of you who've been around a while, no money equals no program. And our financial managers not only get money, but make sure that it's spent legally in accordance with what the taxpayers and the Congress have given to us.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Would Lieutenant Colonel David Galbraith please join us on stage?
Ma'am, I don't have anything to present or anything to give to you, but you know, I've only been your deputy for the past 3 months. And I've learned a lot in that amount of time. But as we were preparing for the ceremony, I reached out to Mike Kahn, while he's deployed in Pakistan. Since he had a lot more time to work with you, I wanted to make sure he had a chance to express his gratitude as well. So I just wanted to read his comments real quick. Ma'am, greetings from Islamabad, Pakistan. Although I can't be there, I wanted to show my appreciation for all you have done in an exceptional career. Thank you for your service to this great country. It is a small and dedicated group of people who answer their nation's call to serve. Thank you for all you've done to empower those who fight our nation's wars. On a more personal note, thank you for selecting me for the F-16 program office. I did not know exactly what working in a SPO would be like after so many years away. But I quickly learned I would lead great people and be led by great people. Thank you for the exceptional mentorship and career counseling. You helped change a cyber warrior and a long-term test guy into a program manager for the F-16. I also want to highlight all the work that you do for the F-16 workforce that they never see. Help with advancing careers, selecting qualified team members, help with standing up for individuals when the going gets tough, help with finding ways to execute the mission, and so much more. And perhaps most importantly, you really care about the F-16 team on a personal level. I know from my experience as I worked through some of life's challenges, both good and bad. Thank you for being a great mentor, wingman, and boss. I wish you the best of luck with all your future endeavors. I would love to add more to that, ma'am, but Mike summed it up so well. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Both of our behalves.
Being a deputy is not easy because, one, you have to fill in where the principal is maybe not as strong, and things that I don't want to deal with, the deputy picks up. And even as recently as yesterday afternoon, I was asking Colonel Galbraith, would you please go micromanage this? This is not coming out right. And they do so much behind the scenes. So thank you, Colonel Galbraith. And Colonel Khan is deployed to Afghanistan. Keep him and his wife with 4 children under the age of 9 in your thoughts and prayers.
Thank you, Colonel Galbraith. Would Mr. Dean Peebles please join us on stage?
Hi, ma'am. Colonel Bailey sends his regrets. He's moving to Hill, and the Packers or unpackers are coming tomorrow. So, but on behalf of him and the entire leadership team, we wanted to get you a little something to remember the program by.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so very much. Thank you, and best of luck for you. Mr. Peebles has taken my place in the F-16. He's inheriting a wonderful program, but he's inheriting some problems that I wasn't able to solve, and he's already come up with some ideas on how to approach them. And I think it's a great selection, and you're going to have the job of your life.
Thank you, Mr. Peebles. Now, I'd like to go a little off script here, and I apologize, Ms. Miller, but I'd like to give a lieutenant's perspective here. So I'd like to say thank you. Thank you for being the leader everyone's mentioning and the mentor. And Mr. Thompson probably doesn't know this, but I was only at the SPO for 1 month, and I had to submit Milestone C charts. And typically when you submit charts, it goes up leadership, they mark on them, send them back down, and you make your edits. Well, instead, Ms. Miller called me in her office and sat me down and went through these charts slide by slide and told me what perspective you were looking at on these charts. So she actually knows you a little more than what you think. Because when I briefed those charts, it went through flawlessly. The credit goes to you. Until we started talking about football. Then you found out I was a Steelers fan. You tried declining my Milestone C there, and that didn't quite work out. That was outside of your control, ma'am. I apologize. But you were the first person like that to have a reach and prepare me for something when I felt so unprepared. And I'm grateful for that. So thank you from us little guys as well. And the Air Force is going to miss you. Excuse me, it's getting sweaty in here. Are there any other additional speakers at this time? Going once? Yes, sir, you're last but not least. I wanted to make sure someone else wanted to. See, I knew there was one more.
Yeah, there always has to be one, right? So as you saw Beth Quinter presented, because there was a question whether I was going to be here or not, representing the development branch, and Beth, you did a wonderful job. Thank you for that. But Ms. Miller, I welcome this opportunity, first of all. One, everybody knows I love to talk to the room, so there was a lot of times where I was in meetings with Ms. Miller, I was going, what did she say? What did she say? So thank goodness they put a microphone, and she's using a microphone in here today, right? So, but Ms. Miller, don't let the soft-spokenness belie the insights and the truly meaningful discussions and comments that she made in meetings that I know that I participated in. Mr. Thompson mentioned her extreme interest in investing in people, teaching how to interview class. Yeah, I raised my hand for that as well. And it was a wonderful class, and I made sure that everybody that worked for and with me, that they knew about that class, so take that class, it would be worth your while. Thank you, Ms. Miller, for taking the time to develop that class, to teach that class, and for all of the mentorship that you did with that, very much with that class. All of the speakers have talked about the great things that Ms. Miller has done. I have my own list of things. I won't bore everybody with that, but again, just want to say, Ms. Miller, thank you very much. And really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for the opportunity that you've given me in leading this branch, taking over from a chaplain position from a very difficult program that you provided a lot of guidance for. Thank you for the opportunity you gave me. And again, best wishes to you and to Mr. David in your next phase. And I was doing the math earlier. She said she was 10 years old when she started. I figured it was 12 years old when she started because you never get beyond 49, right? Thank you very much.
Bandy and I got acquainted first when he had to explain to Mr. Assad why the source selection needed to be redone, and Bandy stood up and defended not only his program, but the people that were really at the risk of basically having their careers reset to zero, and he was not about to let that happen, and so I'm delighted to have worked with you.
Thank you, sir. And last but not least.
Can I speak for that?
Oh, sure.
Change your mind.
Okay.
Jan and I worked together in the home office from 2009, 2010 to 2012 when you went on. And I will tell you that I happen to know she did not want that job. She was thrilled about it. She just came back from school. She wanted that job. She was 16 like every rock and roll she did. But she came in. We had a lot to do. We had to take all the wing squadron structure down to get back to the two-letter organizations. We had to change all the grade structures out of NSPS back to the normal grade structure. We had 3-year adhesives circling here, and anybody didn't notice any of that going on very much, just because Janet and her team held it together. Oh, did I mention that we had a 50% cut in staff? She worked so hard. She worked almost every weekend, 10-hour days, never complained about a job she did right. You know, she knew what needed to be done. She cared about every single person. She mentored, hired, shaped. She cared very much. She cared about career. She helped beef up the career program. The reason we have a lot of our fluency classes today is because of she. So I just want to give you a shout out, speak for myself and Jeff. Wish you the very best. Thank you.
We have one more, Ms. Miller.
Ms. Miller, I don't have a planned presentation. We were going to bring you a gift. It was going to be a security container, but we didn't know how to get it here. 3.5 years ago, when I arrived in the SPO, you told me I had some large shoes to fill with following my predecessor, Lucas Wellman. You were right about that. We've seen massive growth in the SPO. We doubled our security team under you. You were always very supportive of our mission, supporting the the platform. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the assistance you gave us in security. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. You know, part of what we have to do as we work with foreign military customers is make sure that we're able to export things that we want to export for allied operations, but we don't give away the crown jewels of the United States Air Force. And Rod and his team, along with our the rest of the SPO, is very involved in making sure that that happens appropriately.
And now would Mr. Gary Hebert please join us on stage?
Hi, Ms. Miller. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gary Hebert. I've had the honor of working with Ms. Miller for the last several years as part of the front office group, and just an amazing person. So I jotted down a few words. They actually are different than the words I prepared. They came to me at 3 a.m., which is what happens around here. But first, I want to recognize Danny Andrews for that being the bravest contracting officer I've ever met. There's no way I would present that kind of thing. A physicist. You people are scary. And here we are in Affit, right? So I get in my car over at the building to come over here, and it's a black rental car, of course. And I open the door, and I think, holy smokes, it's hot in here. So I do what I do when I go to different parts of the country. I go to the Farmer's Almanac, and I'm like, what's June and July looking like in Dayton? And it says, see the engineering steam tables. So, all right, we're going to get serious here. So one of the best ways to keep peace is to be prepared for war. General George Washington. Peace is our profession. Miss Miller has done an amazing job of preserving the peace over the last 37 years. And that should go with some fanfare and with some sadness, because we're losing a truly great leader in the United States Air Force today. Janet, as a civilian airman, you've been a key contributor to preserving the peace of the United States of America and that of our international partners. You're a true patriot, and the words we heard today reflect your patriotism. You should be proud of your sacrifices and contributions to our nation's defense. In the last few years, you've been an inspiration not only to myself, but to the entire team. You have superpowers. Everybody has a superpower. Janet has 3. Superpower number 1, critical thinking. Anybody who spent any time with Janet Miller watches her digest vast amounts of information, processes it, and then come up with logical courses of action. Superpower number 2, the spoken word. Janet Miller thinks deeply about the words that come out of Janet Miller. You hang your hat on every one of those words because they have meaning, they have intent, they're profound, and they're concise. It is an amazing superpower. And last but not least, Janet Miller is a team builder and a mentor for everyone she meets. She is going to leave this organization better than when she came in, and she's planted the seeds for excellence across this team and across the United States Air Force. And there's no doubt in my mind that many of the people that Janet Miller has mentored over the years are in senior leadership positions or will be in senior leadership positions, to include SES or general officer for that matter, because she just doesn't mentor the civilian population. She mentors contractors, civilians, and active duty airmen. So notwithstanding, and this was mentioned earlier, is Janet's contributions to the Foreign Military Sales Program, roughly 2/3 of our workload. And need I say, the largest foreign military sales program in the Department of Defense. Janet Miller, I'm going to say that again. You were pivotal for the largest foreign military sales program in the Department of Defense. That is a very significant accomplishment and a very awesome job. And one thing I didn't appreciate when I first came into the F-16 program, and I have since really learned, and that is the importance of that foreign military sales program for our nation's defense. And if you think about it, the readiness of our international partners is a global reach, global power concept. If things go south, we're a phone call away from flying F-16s in some very forward places. That's very powerful, and Janet has done a tremendous job making those systems viable, persistent, and relevant. And so to that, we applaud you. Now, the good news is you can't retire from being great. And so we're going to call this a graduation, because there is no doubt in my military mind that you are going to go forward to make additional contributions to our society and to this nation in different ways and wherever God may lead you. And so we look forward to seeing what those are. In the meantime, I do have a memento. And so this is a flag, and I'll read it here. This is to certify this flag was flown in an F-16. Now, if you remember, Miss Miller's first duty assignment was where? Hill Air Force Base. It's flown in an F-16 over Hill Air Force Base, Utah, in honor of Miss Janet Miller. And this was one of the last acts that I got out of the last SPM, Colonel Jeff Gates. I had him sign this for you.
Thank you so very much.
So,
beautiful. Thank you.
So, Miss Miller, I want you to know, and hopefully you will reflect upon that with great pride. Those colors continue to fly, and they don't run, in part because of your contributions to this nation.
Thank you so much, Gary.
Here's your SPM.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hebert. Now we're coming to a close in Ms. Miller's career, and upon retirement, every retiree receives a special retirement pin as a memento of their service. At this time, I'd like to ask David to come forward again and place this pin on his wife's lapel to symbolize transition to the retired status. This pin is to be worn with pride. It signifies to all that the wearer has served their country well and honorably. Thank you, David. Well done. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have Ms. Miller come up and say her comments.
All right. Thank you so much. We've got a lieutenant on standby with a script. I actually have a script in my pocket, but I'm going to do my best without. So Pastor June offered the invocation. Your program says Deacon Robin, and she had a family emergency. It's pertinent to my comments because when I told David that Robin would be opening with an invocation, his reaction was, oh, you're not going to get too religious on us, are you? And I said, well, of course not, David. It's a civic event. But then, yes, you should continue to worry. But I thought, how can I not? That's part of who I am. But I'm not going to go there too much, only to say that everything that I have is a gift from God.
So, sometimes Janet gets choked up when talking about how wonderful the F-16 team is, especially when thinking about the great lieutenants in the office. She's asked me to step in and give her a moment to collect herself, and if necessary, read her script.
Okay. So, one of the great things that I'm gifted with is a tremendous workforce, and I wanted to point out that when I walk around this base, and I've had a lot of opportunity to do that, and at Hill Air Force Base, I would walk around the 1200 building when I lived there and was working in a program office. And I don't see industrial facilities. What I see is that the entire value that we bring is held in our people. And that's evidence one, that you're the greatest workforce in the world. Evidence two, we've had furloughs on base. And one of the biggest issues with the furlough is, well, nothing happens because the workforce is so dedicated, the job continues to get done. And it's difficult to point out impact because you will not let the ball drop for our warfighters. Thank you.
And we interrupt your regularly scheduled speech with this news alert. A big thank you to those who made today's celebration possible. To the planners, April Brower, Lieutenant Hayden Emily Clark, Todd Osborne, great job. To our officiator, Mr. Thompson, Jessica Tucker, Pastor June, Steve Moselle, thank you for sharing your talent. To the configuration team, led by Miss Ann Detro, and Tina Upshaw, who provided our reception. Looking forward to indulging. Thank you.
All right, I do have some gifts for some special people. One of the things that has been mentioned is that I really enjoy mentoring and teaching. And I know you mentioned the How to Interview class. I actually also like to do the role of the PM. And one that never really caught on, but I still think is important, is excellent performance. Because as Mr. Thompson read earlier, that's the key. You could ask the senior leaders, and all of us would have different career paths, but they would all share the same thing, and that is excellent performance at every step of the way. So I believe, Andrea, are you here, Andrea Stewart? No, okay. Andrea was one of, I started mentoring her when she was a student in grad school, and I have grown to be very good friends with her and recognize her really as a representation of all of the people that I've had a chance to mentor and be mentored by over the years. I want to thank those who hired me. Don McKee is here, who brought me back from the Pentagon. The Pentagon job was okay, but David and I were living apart at that time. Nothing wrong with the marriage, but the Air Force wanted me to be in Washington, and David said, I'm moving back home. And, Hogg Griffiths, who was one of my wonderful supervisors, and of course, Colonel Baird, who hired me for the job that I have now 4 years ago. And it's been the best job of my career. Thank you. And thank you. I do have some gifts, I think, for some special friends, off-base friends, and my family. And I want to start by cheating a little bit because Joan is a retiree from the base, but she was able to be here with me today. And Joan Darding has been retired for a number of years and has been a great friend. And my award talked about setting up a lieutenant's program, but Joan is really the one who did it. So thank you. And I have a friend, Beth Evans. Beth, would you come forward? And Beth was at my 2 promotions ago with her grandparents, and they're both gone, but Beth is with us, and I'm so glad to call you my friend. Thank you. All right. My friends Michelle and Toby Petrie, and I've known them since before they were married. They recently celebrated their 20th anniversary, and I met them because I wanted to interpret, and now if I had to give up either of the friendship or interpreting would go away. Yeah. Love you. All right. And I have some dear family here today. I want to recognize both my niece and my nephew, both of whom I tried to recruit to the United States Air Force, and I failed miserably. But they have both forged a tremendous careers of their own, and more importantly, tremendous lives. They've found people that they can share their life with, and I'm so glad for that. Jennifer, for you. I love you. Benny. And I think I have a card for Benny and Logan. I thought maybe you wouldn't care for the flowers, but they're new homeowners, so I think you can use something there. All right. Ruby is in the process of downsizing, so I didn't think you would want a flower, but I may need some help.
Sure.
But this is for you. Would you read the blurb about Benny?
Yes, so Jennifer and Benny's grandmother, Ruby Williams, who invited us to their home for all holidays when we were with each other. Her late husband, Benny, started saying we should just assume we are invited and not wait for an invitation because you are family.
My sister, Judy, and I know we don't look anything alike. Here you go. Thank you so much. And we grew up together, and it's been great to be here a little closer. And then her husband, Benny, we have a little something for you. I think David already gave it to you. Yes, it couldn't quite come on base. Would you read the part that
Yes.
I had written?
So my sister Judy and her husband Benny. As you can tell, at family gatherings, there are always several Bennys, although most people call him Scott. Just recently, retired as a school teacher, having taught math at Tecumseh for 37 years. Now that's a tough job. Growing up together, I can't think of a better sister to have. I've really enjoyed living near Judy and Benny. Here's a special gift for you in honor of both of our retirements.
This is for you.
Finally, David, I'm done working.
Stories you haven't heard and we can tell you.
Well, he did tell me, and I think Tina will appreciate this, that he was cutting off my Santa Fe rice and beans supply since I've had the same lunch every day for many, many years. And, he goes to the grocery and gets it. But David, I forgot to recognize David at my last promotion. I'm not going to make that mistake today. You've been wonderful. You've been there all the time. And I'm going to try, but be ready. Be ready. So, go ahead.
All right. Nailed it. Finally, David has been with me all the way. He takes care of me in ways that have directly helped my career. For example, every business trip, David drove me to the airport and picks me up when I return home. You moved across the country, even though we were happy in Utah. He put up with being a geo bachelor on 2 separate occasions. He makes some of the extra touches possible. For example, your cakes help celebrating team victories in the office. I love you. I had to put some heart into it,
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Lieutenant Hayden. All right. I mentioned the workforce, and I'm going to conclude with that having the best workforce in the world is what has enabled us, despite many reorganizations, and sorry, interpreter, I'm going to use a little harder phrase. I never believed in perpetual motion until I joined the Air Force, and we constantly reorganize and move people around. And yet, what makes it go is you, the men and women of the United States Air Force. So thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, yes. After 37 years of dedicated service to our Air Force, it is my distinct privilege to present to you Miss Janet L. Miller, United States Air Force retired. Thank you very much, ma'am. On behalf of the F-16 System Program Office, we would like to wish you every success in the near future. This concludes today's ceremony. You're invited to join us in congratulating retired Miss Janet Miller and her family in the back of the room. Please help yourselves to food and beverages. Please wait for Miss Miller and Brigadier General Collins to exit the room. You all are already rising. So please join Jessica for the singing of the Air Force song, followed by the departure of the official party.
Don't leave me alone, y'all. Here we go. Off we go
into the wild
blue yonder, climbing high into the sun. Here they come, moving to meet our thunder. Adam boy, giving the gun. Down we dive, starting our plane from under. Off with one hell of a roar. We live in fame, we go down in flames. Hey, nothing can stop the U.S. Air Force.